Hi guys, it's Lucy, and today I'm here to do my August and NEWT TBR. In the month of August, I took part in 2 readathons. I took part in the booktubeathon, which I have a whole vlog of if you want to check that out. And then I also took part in the NEWT, which was a month-long readathon. And this is kind of the wrap-up for that as well, but a bunch of books I read in August weren't for the readathons, so this isn't just a NEWT wrap-up. I managed to read 11 books in August, which I say is pretty good, if I may say so myself. Is that the saying? I don't think it is. 6 of them were audiobooks, 3 were ebooks, 2 were physical copies, spoiler. Also, just some life update stuff. I went to the Decatur Book Festival. I always wanted to call it Decatur, which is a book festival here in Atlanta, Georgia. I went. It was a good time. I went on the Saturday. It was like a 2-day thing. And yeah, I had a good time. I don't have anything from it because I actually didn't buy anything there, but I did buy some stuff from like the little stores that were around that had nothing to do with the book festival, but they were there. And I also went to see Beyonce in concert. Now let's get into the books that I read. As always, I talk about them in chronological order, and by that I mean the order that I read them. So first we'll have the books that I read during the booktubeathon. Like I said, I do have a vlog of that readathon up on my channel if you want to like see that whole week more in depth for me. But the first book that I finished was It's Kind of a Funny Story by Vizzini. This has a trigger warning for depression, suicide, and transphobia. This is about a teenage boy who's dealing with depression and he's suicidal, so one day he decides to check himself into a psychiatric hospital. And we follow him. It's kind of like half him dealing with his depression outside of the hospital and half him getting to the hospital and what that's like for him. I gave this 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it, and I thought it gave like a pretty good insight on what it's like to be in a psychiatric ward in a hospital. I have never read anything about that, so it was a new experience for me to read it. And I also appreciated the family element that was included. Craig's family, Craig's the main character, his family is pretty supportive and quite like loving. It's not one of those stories where the character is like depressed and their family doesn't really believe them. The reason I gave it 3.5 stars instead of 4 stars is because unfortunately it is about a teenage boy, and as I have suspected about myself for quite a while, I just don't really like reading about teenage boys. And also, like I mentioned before, this has trigger warning for transphobia because one of the people Craig meets in the hospital is trans. Maybe it's very unclear, but the way they're treated and described is just not okay. So the book is over 10 years old, which I think is why that's kind of like in there. The next book I finished was Fresh Ink, edited by Lamar, Giles. I received this book on NetGalley in exchange for an honest review, which is what I'm doing here today. And this is basically an Own Voices anthology, basically where the focus is on diversity. This was created in partnership with We Need Diverse Books. I gave this book 4 stars. This gets like basically the generic review for an anthology. Basically, I enjoyed some stories more than others. I enjoyed most of the stories though, to some degree. If you want individual story reviews, I'm not going to do that here, but you can check out my Goodreads review. My favorite story in the anthology was Why I Learned How to Cook by Sarah Farzan, and my least favorite story was A Stranger at the Bonich, I don't know how to say that, by Daniel Jose Older. Unfuck Your Habitat, You're Better Than Your Mess by Rachel Hoffman. This is kind of a self-help book about like getting yourself together and like cleaning your environment and like your house and stuff. I found this like blog, like Rachel Hoffman runs a blog, and I found it and I thought it was really like nice and concise. So the blog also promotes her book, so I decided to check it out from my library and listen to the audiobook. So I did listen to the audiobook. I gave this 3.5 stars. I thought it had some good points, but most of it was honestly in the blog. My biggest problem, like personally, is that I'm messy, but not necessarily dirty. So like I don't leave dishes in the sink. I don't like leave food in my room or anything like that. So like most of my mess is like I just don't get around to doing stuff like dusting things or something. So I feel like this might have been geared a little more towards like dirty people, which isn't like, I don't know how to explain dirty without being like offensive, but like I feel like you get what I mean. But I'd also say this is a book that does acknowledge that certain people have different abilities to do things. It takes into account that some people have mental illnesses that make it hard to get up and do things, or they might have physical illnesses like chronic pain or something like that. So if you have those things and are looking for a way to clean up your environment more, I recommend this because she does focus a good amount on that. And so those last 3 books were for the Booktubeathon. Unfuck Your Habitat was the last book that I finished during the Booktubeathon. The next book I started reading during the Booktubeathon but didn't finish it during it, so it doesn't count. Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. As you can see, I tapped it up a lot. So I had a good time reading this. I gave it 4 stars. This is an essay collection by Roxane Gay, who if you haven't heard of by now, you've been living under a rock. She's just like a very famous like feminist author. As I expected to, I really enjoyed this. The first half got into kind of a rocky start for me because it was more personal. I really liked her essays where she examined like things more than like her personal life story, although I did appreciate parts where she was honest. There's trigger warning for rape in this book. I really appreciated her writing on the Hunger Games and also Tyler Perry, because although she has slightly different opinions on Tyler Perry, like I don't watch his movies at all because I hate them. But hate is a strong word, but I don't like Tyler Perry movies and I don't like the idea of them, and she kind of goes into like, she expresses my feelings about like why I don't like them in a good way, even though she does watch them. But yeah, and I just feel like this is like a really reassuring book for anyone who's like wants to be a feminist but like has an all or nothing attitude towards it, or like feels like they have to, and she kind of shows that you don't need to, and that it's okay to like mess up sometimes, or like have certain thoughts at some points, you know? So I really like this. Next we have The Bells by Dhonielle Clayton. This book gave me an A for acceptable in the NEWTs, so now we're getting into some NEWTs books, but not every book that I talk about after this will be for the NEWTs. But the challenge for Muggle Studies was to read a book written by your favorite author, or like one of your favorite authors, and I consider Dhonielle Clayton to be one of my favorite authors, even though now I've only read 2 of her books, but she only has 2, I think, right? I should know that, right? But I love Tiny Pretty Things so much, she counted. And I finished this. We got 2 tabs here. This is set in a fantasy world called Orleans, where everyone is born gray, and certain people called Bells are not born gray and have the ability to like instill beauty in everyone else. And the Bells are very revered in society because they're the ones who can make everyone not gray, basically. We follow Camellia, who is in the next generation of upcoming Bells, so every like generation there's like a ceremony where they're all assigned like their postings, and one of the postings is to become the favorite, which is like the bell for the queen and the palace. And we follow Camellia, who really wants to be the favorite and get to the palace, and then stuff happens and she kind of finds out that the court life and everything going on in the city is not really as she thought it was, and yeah, that's a bad description, but that's basically what it is. I'll be honest, I didn't love this as much as I wanted to. I gave it 4 stars, but I kind of thought it was going to be like 4.5 star, 5-star book. And the weakest part of the book were the characters, in my opinion. I found that some of them weren't as strong in their characterization as they could have been. They flip-flopped in their opinions. Sometimes in some of the stuff that they did, I thought that they kind of wouldn't do based on how the characters were. So that was a weak part for me, but the strongest part was, I think, the world building, just because I thought the whole like idea of the Bells was so cool, and like how their magic, not quite magic, but like their work is done, I thought was really well fleshed out and really interesting. And I think this will be a trilogy, so I am looking forward to reading the next book. Like I definitely enjoyed it enough to like continue on the series. How I Resist, Activism and Hope for the Next Generation, edited by Maureen Johnson. This is another essay collection, although this one is also a collection of like interviews, stories, comic things. I listened to the audiobook, so I didn't get to see like the comics that were included in this collection, so keep that in mind if you're like interested in reading this. I'm not really sure it would have affected my rating. I did give it 4 stars. So this is basically a collection of essays and interviews and such from various people, including Dylan Marin, Jason Reynolds, and Saba Tahir. There's like a bunch more, but those are, I feel like, recognizable names, where they just kind of talk about being activists, what that means to them, how to inspire young people to take up more of an activist role. I thought that interviews were more effective than the other parts. Like I kind of wish it was just like all interviews. My Life as Ava, The Struggle is Real by Ava Gutowski. This gave me an E for Exceeds Expectations in Muckle Studies for the NEWTs, and I gave this 3.5 stars. If you don't know, Ava Gutowski is a YouTuber who makes YouTube videos. They're more lifestyle and they're geared towards a younger audience, but I used to watch her videos on occasion. I still do watch her videos occasionally, and so I decided to just pick up her book that she wrote. It's basically a memoir, but like she's 22, like my age, so there's not a lot, and there's a trigger warning for rape in this book and sexual assault. So yeah, I gave 3.5 stars. Don't know if I mentioned that. That was good, and it was fine. I thought it will be good for her audience specifically, which does tend to be younger, like around 12 or 13, I think. So yeah, this is good for her audience. Writing was nothing to write home about. It was nothing really profound or anything. Like, I didn't learn 50 million life lessons. I thought it was decent, and it had decent advice and spread some nice sentiments that I think younger people should hear. How to Win At Feminism by Reductress. Reductress is an online magazine, so it was kind of like their writing team wrote this. I think there were a couple of authors on Goodreads, but I'm not sure that those were all the people who contributed to this. I have no idea. But I gave this 3 stars. It's basically like a satirical guide on how to win at feminism. And yeah, it was not that funny. It was kind of funny, but like not that funny. It shouldn't have been. As long as it was, it just felt so long. It took me so long to read this. I think something like 2 weeks, and it's like 200 pages. It should not have taken me that long to read it. My main issue with it is that like the headlines are funny, like the chapter titles are funny, or like not like haha funny, but like, you know, satire. Like you don't always laugh at satire, but you can tell it's funny. I don't know how to explain that. Maybe I'm just a robot and have no feelings, but I hope I'm getting that across. And that's kind of the same deal with like Reductress as a website. If you don't know, like I mentioned, it's an online satirical magazine, kind of like The Onion, but it focuses mainly on feminist topics. And this book was kind of the website put into a book. And my thing is, I don't really read Reductress. I just see the headlines on like Facebook, or like someone like reposts it or something, and like I read the headline, I like think it's funny a little bit, and I move on. Like, I don't really read the articles. So I recommend this as a coffee table book that you kind of just like flip through on a whim. Like whenever you like see it, you're like, oh, I want to laugh, and just like read a little bit of it. But definitely don't read this straight through, and also definitely don't leave this on your coffee table because it's quite inappropriate. There's some very inappropriate things. Yeah, so don't leave it on your coffee table unless you're like, you know, into that, and you have guests who are into that, I guess. And the penultimate book is Geekerella by Ashley Poston. I received a copy of this from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review, but I did end up listening to the audiobook because this book actually came out a year ago. I got the NetGalley copy because it was coming out in paperback. So I gave this 3 stars. This is a Cinderella retelling where we follow 2 characters. One who is like Cinderella. We follow Elle Whitaker. Is her name? Whittemer? Is that her real name? Elle. We follow Elle, who has an intense love for a show called Starfield, which is clearly like Star Trek, Star Wars, like that kind of thing. The omniscient they are turning Starfield into a movie, and she is not quite happy about that. But along with the movie, they announced like a cosplay contest where if you win, you end up getting to go to like the premiere of the movie. So Elle wants to enter that, and then simultaneously we follow the new lead of the Starfield adaptation. I didn't write down his name and I forgot it, but we follow him as he's dealing with like him jetting into fame, I guess. Like he was already kind of famous, but now this is really gonna put him on the map, and like dealing with like the hatred because like a lot of people don't think he's right for the role and like that kind of stuff. And somehow these 2 characters like meet and blah blah blah, and yeah. And I didn't really like this book. Like I said, I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. I just turns out don't like Cinderella that much is the issue. Like I don't like the whole premise, kind of, it turns out, which sucks because like I feel bad because all the issues I had with this book were basically because it's Cinderella. Like I didn't like how evil the stepfamily was. It felt so unrealistic to me, which I couldn't reconcile because this is like, it's a contemporary book. Like it's set in modern day, present day, and like I feel like the way the stepmother acted, like someone should have called CPS at some point. Like, I can't imagine. I mean, I guess I can, like, it happens all the time, but, like, it just felt very unrealistic to me. And this was also darker than I expected. I was expecting, like, a light, fluffy read, which, again, thinking about Cinderella is not really a fluffy story. Because, you know, it's about a girl who's just abused by her stepfamily. But, like, it was just so over the top. Like, her stepsister makes fun of her because her dad died. Like, who does that? Like, no one does that. Like, I just didn't really enjoy it. It was fine. The other character, the lead character, he was kind of unnecessary now that I'm thinking about it. But he was fine. I enjoyed his character. There was a thing at the end that really annoyed me, but it's a spoiler, so I wrote it in my Goodreads review. But if you want to see what it is, you can check that out. Or leave a comment down below and I'll spoil it for you. And the last book that I read was A Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst. I gave this book 4 stars. This is another fantasy where it's set in a world where we follow 2 characters. First we follow Princess Dhonielle, who's like the princess of her kingdom, and then she was betrothed to the prince of another kingdom in order for the 2 kingdoms to form an alliance. So she has gone to this kingdom, but Dhonielle has a secret. She has an affinity for fire. This is an elemental-based magic fantasy world. So Dhonielle has an affinity for fire, and in the new kingdom where she is, they have a vehement hatred for people who have any kind of affinity, who do any kind of magic. So she has to hide that, and then simultaneously we also follow Princess Mare, who's the princess of the kingdom that Dhonielle moves to, but she's not getting the crown because her brother has it, or her brother is going to get it. So, and she's also refused to like marry or do anything that is traditionally expected of the princess of the kingdom. And she kind of just takes care of the horses all day. And yeah, and you follow them. If you've heard of this book, which you probably have, because I feel like it took book 2 by storm a little bit when it first came out. This is an FF romance. I thought the romance was cute, nice. I had a little bit of a problem with it at the beginning because I thought Dhonielle liked Mare more than Mare liked her. And by that, I mean Dhonielle seemed really infatuated with Mare, and Mare did not seem to even want to look at her. So that was a little off for me, but once we move past that, it's cute. The actual like mystery plot of the story, because there's like a whole thing going on with the magic in the kingdom, which is another reason Dhonielle has to hide it, was pretty predictable. I predicted kind of how it ended. Like the last like 5 chapters, I kind of knew what was going to happen, but it was still like done reasonably well. There is another book set in this world, but I don't think I'm going to read it just because I don't think the world was as fleshed out as it could have been. There's a lot of stuff that I wish we had learned more of, so I guess I should read the other book, but I don't want to, so I'm not going to. But I did enjoy this for what it was, and if you're looking for an FF fantasy romance, this could be your book. So those are all the books that I read in August. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought of any of the books that I mentioned in this video, and let me know what was your favorite book that you read in August. My favorite book was Feminist. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel because I make more videos where I talk about books, and also hit the notification bell. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!